r/AskReddit. Were you ever close to being killed, kidnapped, robbed? If so, how did you avoid it, get away? In the early 90s in Detroit, I was mugged. I was about 21 at the time. The guy who mugged me was a kid who tutored me in Spanish. I was like, Jose, you tutored me in Spanish and I went to your sister's quinceanera. Dude, I'll tell your mom. He then ran away. I was driving my car in a small state park, with cruise control set to 25 miles per hour and good music playing and just enjoying the day. Suddenly a huge pickup truck 2 cars in front of me pulled out of traffic and did a huge loop in this gravel parking lot next to the road, spinning his tires and kicking up all sorts of dust and rocks. No big deal. I though, just some idiot trying to show off. He then aimed his truck towards the road and started accelerating in what appeared to be a collision course with my car. I was about to slam on my brakes when he suddenly jerked his wheel and missed me. It all happened so fast that I didn't even think to flip the guy off. He immediately pulled onto the road and started tailgating me. I figured he was just pissed off that I didn't let him cut me off and was trying to show it until he rammed my car for the first time. While I was dialing 911, he rammed it again, making it clear that he wasn't going away. Traffic was really heavy, so all I could do was watch in the rearview mirror so I'd know when to brace for the next impact and try to avoid wrecking. At one point, he tried to push me into the Jetta that was driving in front of me, so that ducker simply pulled over, let us pass, and got back on the road behind us without ever calling 911. Seriously, duck that guy. Eventually traffic coming the other way cleared enough that I was able to pass a few cars in front of my bike going into the wrong lane. Once I put a few cars between us, psycho guy backed off. I was still on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, and he directed me to the park police station and promised me that park cops were after the guy. I went to the police station and listened to the rest of it on the radio. The first cop tried to pull him over and the truck just ignored him. The second one tried to block the road, but he was able to get around him. The third was better hidden and forced a collision, after which they were able to arrest him. The arresting cop came to talk to me afterwards and told me the guy was mental. He showed me the gun he took from him, and said that the guy was on a mission from God to kill people and had decided somehow that I fit his profile. I guess how I got away was by staying calm and using my head, instead of letting myself panic and freaking out. When I was in my 20s, I got home from a business trip in the middle of the day and was driving back to my office from the airport, which involved being on the interstate for 50 miles or so. This was in the 80s, and cell phones weren't a thing yet. An old car with 2 men inside starts following me. Then they pull up beside me. The man in the passenger seat tells me that one of my back wheels is about to come off the car. Okay, well, my car was fairly new and was running fine as far as I could tell. No handling problems, nothing. I remembered that an upcoming exit had a full service gas station with an attached mechanic's shop, so I exited there, and the men in the other car followed me. I rolled up to the entrance to the mechanic's shop, where I was sure there would be people around, and opened my window. Out walked this absolute mountain of a mechanic. I mean, he was over 6 feet tall, and a good 275 pounds. I told him that the men in the car who followed me said my back wheel was about to come off, but I didn't think there was a problem. Anyway, giant mechanic man started ambling over to the car that had followed me, and they very quickly hauled us out of there and got back on the interstate. I wish I could have got their number plates. I didn't even think about how sketchy the whole situation was until it was over. I forget who, but there was a serial killer around that time who would try to use that trick and get women to pull over in order for him to help them. I think he'd then actually tamper with their tires to get them to crash or something. Glad you made it safely. When I was 9 or so, I went to the bathroom in a restaurant that was in a mall, peed at the urinal, and a big mentally disabled guy was standing behind me when I turned around. He frightened me and said he wanted to show me something, and grabbed my wrists and tried to pull me into the stall. I pulled my arms, but he would not let go. When I was 9, I thought he either wanted to show me a giant shit or hurt me in the stall. Just as he was pulling me across the stall threshold, he let go of one wrist to close the stall door. I kicked him pretty hard in the leg and pulled my other arm away and got free. Ran out to my family that was eating in the restaurant and sat down. I didn't say anything, but they all knew something happened because I was white in shock. And just then the guy was speed walking out of the bathroom leaving the restaurant. My mom said what happened. I just said that guy tried to pull me into the stall and my 70-year-old grandmother jumped up and chased him before I finished talking. They made it to the mall and just by chance there was an undercover mall security guy sitting outside the restaurant and tackled the guy cause my grandmother was yelling to get that guy. You can't end the story there. This isn't complete. What happened after he got caught? We went to the security office in the mall. I was in one room. The guy was in the other room next door. When the police showed up, the guy went ham. We could hear him smashing and punch the wall in the next room. I think he fought the police when they go in the room. I told the police officers what happened. The restaurant gave us our meal at no charge and a gift certificate for $150 I think for a being brave kid, and the mall security gave me a couple vending marking toys from the $1 vendor thing. We went home. Not sure what happened to the guy after that. I was 9. My mom handled that, I guess. Your grams was the bomb. Chasing that child molester down. Grandmas are the best. I was once robbed at knife point. I'm a pretty tall guy, 6'2", but I was pretty skinny then. I had just bought Worms for the PC and Menswear Nuisance album. Was talking the escalator down on Argyle Street in Glasgow. Guy comes up next to me and asks me for the time. I tell him I didn't have a watch. He then pulls out the knife, probably about 3-4 inches long, and says give me the bag, and I hand him over the bag. We are now at the bottom of the escalator and he asks me if I have any other money. I pulled out a load of change from my pocket and give him that. He asks if I have anything else. I say no. I then ask him if I can have my train fare home. He gives me 50p and says what do you need? I said I needed the £1, meaning swap it for the 50p, so he gives me that as well. He then tells me to walk away and he goes back up the escalator. Mugged and got a £1.50 refund. I don't think there was a conductor on the train, so I kept my £1.50 at it. Thanks for the silver, kind stranger. My first ever award. When the crooks are so polite they make change. Well, of course. Otherwise, they'd just be mean. He's a thief, not a savage. When I was in middle school, I came home from school one day and noticed something odd in the big glass window at the front of the house. Our back door was wide open, so I figured one of my parents were home early from work. I walked in the house to see it was totally trashed. I then heard voices at the back door. It definitely wasn't either of my parents. I then dropped my bag and ran out the front door. I ran down to a friend's house which was a few houses down. I then called the cops and said my house was being robbed. Police arrived and the guys were gone, along with all the stuff. Take note that I was like 13 or 14 at the time, so it wasn't like I could do much. You did the right thing. I was 14 when this happened. I was visiting my mother for the summer. She lives in a very small apartment and at the time there was a lot of druggies there. There was one guy who came up to me asking to borrow a charger since I had the same kind of phone. My mom gave him the charger because she could just get me another. I had seen him a few times after this but didn't think much of it until one day I was sitting outside and he pulled up in his car. He said to me, "Hey, wanna come to Tim Hortons with me?" I was scared of course, so I told him that my mother wouldn't let me. He talked a bit after that and then drove off. A few days later me, my brother and my mom got home from somewhere. Me and my brother stayed outside and talked. I kept hearing whistling and someone yelling hey, so I looked over and the guy was there. My brother and me went over there and he started saying how nice my hair was. I had dyed it earlier that day to pink, blue and purple. He asked what we was planning to do when we were older and I said artist. Well, my brother said engineer. He said it was cool and we talked. He kept repeating himself and I just zoned out. After a bit I looked down and the man had his dong in his hand. I backed up and hid behind my brother and the man just told me don't be afraid and then he ran away, got in his car and drove off. I never did see that guy aging. But I firmly believe that if my brother wasn't with me he would have taken me and done horrible things to me. I'm thankful he was there. Yikes, what a pathetic perv. Did you guys tell your mum and have him reported? I was 10 and at school. I'd stayed behind to clean the classroom whilst the rest of the kids went out to play. Between my classroom and the yard there was what essentially passed as a wide alleyway. with no visibility to either the classrooms or the yard. I was walking down this place when I spotted a beaten up old car just parked. There were 2 adult men sat in it. As I got closer to the car, the guy close to me grinned and swung his door open. I panicked and ran, and didn't stop running until I was stood next to a teacher. I saw the car drive off through the open front gate. A few weeks later, a letter went round the school warning parents of 2 men in an old car snatching children from nearby schools. What the duck kind of school has a alleyway like that where a car and 2 men can go unnoticed? That's the most messed up thing to me. When I was a young boy, probably 12 or 13, my dad and I took a spontaneous vacation to Duluth, MN. Since I'd never been there, I'd honestly never been on vacation before. So I was so excited to experience being somewhere awesome just for the fun of it. We had decided before leaving that would save money by skipping the hotel and sleeping in the truck and a rest lot. He'd sleep on an air mattress in the back of the truck with the topper, and I would sleep in the cab. We found a rest stop in town and went to sleep. At one point in the middle of the night, I had to use the restroom, so I left the cab and used the men's room at the rest stop. There was one other guy in there using a urinal. The best word I can use to describe him was soggy. He looked like a mess. I'm pee shy, so I just stood at a different urinal for a few seconds and promptly left. He was blatantly watching me the whole time. I get about halfway to the truck when I see he's following me. I begin to run and so does he. I manage to barely get into the truck on time to lock the door behind me, where he's now pulling on the handle. Breathing heavily, I begin to yell DAAAAD, wake up, and he pops up from the back like a meerkat. The guy locks eyes with my dad and quickly makes a 180 into a minivan and they speed off. I've honestly never given it all that much thought since it happened. Probably just tried to repress it or something. Having typed it out, I'm kind of shaking a little. TLDR. 13-year-old me almost got kidnapped at a rest stop in the middle of the night. I live in Duluth. I'm so sorry to hear about your experience. There are definitely some sketchy people in some neighborhoods here. So glad you made it away safely. I've been robbed once, mostly because I got lost and walked into the wrong part of New York on my own, not knowing that I should steer clear of that area. Was threatened by 2 people with knives. Handed over something like $200 I had on me. They didn't believe that I didn't have anything else. I had a cell phone and a watch, but both were of the $10 Walmart variety and they didn't want those. So they rifled through my pockets and took my passport, tore my t-shirt in the process, pushed me into a wall and then scrammed. Luckily I didn't have anything worse than a few scrapes and bruises. I made a report to the police, got told I was an idiot, and then went to the German embassy, where I was also told I was an idiot but at least got a new passport. Edit. I see my original post gave something of a wrong impression of the New York City police in my original post. Was typing this out on my phone and trying to keep it brief as a result. They never actually called me an idiot. The police officer very politely pointed out that this wasn't the best neighborhood of New York and that it had a history of crime, and that it wasn't the best idea to be walking through it alone after dark and looking like I was obviously a tourist. I then said something like, "So you're saying I was a bit of an idiot?" To which the officer replied, "You said that, sir, not me." Also, this was in 2008 or 2009, thereabouts. Anyways, what part of NY? Harlem. Yep, Harlem ain't fun. About 6 months ago I was walking to a friend of mine's house to go hang out. Now to get to her house you gotta walk through downtown, which isn't all that sketchy, and it was the middle of the day so I wasn't worried about it whatsoever. I'm walking down the sidewalk when I notice out of the corner of my eye that there is a guy trailing behind me. He was a comfortable space away from me so I wasn't freaked out at first, not till I heard him pick up his pace. Now at this point I'm right in front of City Hall. There is an alleyway that leads to the City Hall parking lot, and my friend Giovanni, who has been known to knock a couple heads, lives directly behind the parking lot. The alleyway is pretty big and very well lit, as well as a nice security camera hiding in the corner. So if this guy tried any shit he was on camera. I make a quick turn into this alley and manage to make it into the parking lot. I'm getting ready to jog over to Giovanni's house when I feel a hand wrap around mine. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier, I was carrying my school issued laptop with me, so he grabbed a hold of the hand that was carrying the laptop. When he grabbed me, I instinctively turn around to face him when I barely have enough time to react, and he punches me across the face. I fall to the ground, but because I tensed up, I had a tight grip on the laptop. He leaned over me in an attempt to grab it. My body's adrenaline kicked in and I kicked him in the groin as hard as I possibly could. He fell to his knees immediately and I took that opportunity to scramble away and stand up. I quickly took my laptop case in both hands and smashed him as hard as I could across the face with it. I didn't look back as I ran out the way I came, screaming and crying, before people in a nearby restaurant poked their head out and brought me inside and called the police. To this day I think of all the things I could have or should have done differently. I also think about if he would have killed me over a laptop. Scary world out there. Was the laptop okay? Unfortunately no. The screen was broken, but the school understood the situation and didn't charge me for it. Did they catch the guy? Again, unfortunately no. The description I gave apparently wasn't descriptive enough to really nail someone. I wasn't able to give the authorities any real outlining details like a tattoo or a piercing, and I could really only give them the basics because, if I'm being totally honest, a lot of that whole ordeal is blurry as some aspects. At the moment everything seemed like forever, but when I think back on it happened so fast. But they did take a screenshot from the security camera in the alleyway and paired it with my description in hopes that someone will come forward with something. I travel a lot for my work in the wedding industry. I was in Texas alone, working a military wedding. The bride had booked my hotel room, which turned out to be part of the suites reserved for the bridal party. I ended up checking in and getting into the elevator at the same time as the pack of rowdy day drunk Marine groomsmen were also getting in. Me, one girl, smashed in a small space with 8 dudes. One of them made a comment to me, "Looks like you were stuck with us." That I thought was weird, but maybe the dude is drunk and awkward. I let it slide. The tone was sexual though, and put me on guard. As we got to our floor, the same floor, unfortunately, I headed out first and same guy says to his buddy, "Should we follow her?" I must have knee-jerk looked over my shoulder in fear. I swear, he saw that I was afraid and he started to laugh. He and his buddy thought it was hilarious. That was pretty worrying. During the wedding, he kept coming over and talking to me and trying to touch me. His buddy got bolder, drunker, too, and would try it. At the end of the night, I had this really horrible suspicion that it was not safe to try and go back to my hotel room alone. I asked the wedding planner and her male assistant if they would be kind enough to drive me back to the hotel and walk me up to my room. Sure enough, those 2 guys were waiting in the hallway. I have no idea what would have happened, and thank God I'll never know. I was around 5 and was pretty much forced to play with my cousin who was about 12 at the time, and the entire thing was messed up with me getting molested, telling my mum, her telling me to deal with it myself, and this all went on a couple times a month until I was 7. Pretty much it started getting too far for my sister to not intervene. I don't blame her, she has really bad anxiety, and I just remember her shouting at him and dragging him off me. She's 4 years younger than him and was always really small and frail, so I really appreciate that she stopped him. Summary: my sister stopped my cousin raping me when I was around 6/7.